Hello everyone and welcome to Legislative Deep Dive. I'm your host, David Fite, and today we have a fun episode for y'all. In case you think that all they do in DC is plot to steal from you, bomb kids overseas, and gaslight you into thinking both of those things are good for you, maybe this episode will lighten your view. As always, like, follow, subscribe, share, and support to keep your friends, family, and the world informed on what's really being introduced and passed in the halls of Congress. Now, Senate Resolution 111 by Senators King and Collins out of Maine passed the Senate the other day, and it gave me a chuckle that I wanted to share with you guys. So let's dive in. Recognizing the importance of maple syrup production to Maine and designating March 26, 2023 as Maine Maple Sunday. Now, I want to point out first and foremost, this is not a new national holiday or day of something. It is just the one day of this year, not a recurring thing at all. So normally I would skip all of these whereas clauses because they're kind of unnecessary, but these ones are interesting and they make up 80% of the bill. So let's read through them. Whereas the art of making sugar and syrup from the sap of the maple tree, also known as acrosaccharinum, was developed by Native Americans in the northeastern United States. And whereas production of maple syrup in Maine has a seasonal window between January and May, which is when temperatures drop below freezing at night and rise above freezing during the day. And whereas Maine accounts for 17% of the United States' production of maple syrup and is the third largest producer among states. And whereas Maine maple syrup producers make more than 575,000 gallons of syrup annually, generating over $27 million for the Maine economy. And whereas maple syrup production in Maine supports more than 560 full-time and part-time jobs that generate more than $17.3 million in wages. Whereas Maine Maple Sunday has been observed for 40 years, with more than 100 sugar houses participating from Aroostook to York County, Maine, and attracting thousands of visitors annually. And whereas Maine Maple Sunday is always observed on the fourth Sunday in March, and whereas on March 26, 2023, Maine maple syrup producers will host the 40th annual Maine Maple Sunday. So that's all the whereases. Technically, this whole thing becomes null and void if any of those figures are off, which I find kind of amusing. But I trust Mainers to know their maple syrup stats, so we're going to take their word for it here. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Senate A, designates March 26, 2023 as Maine Maple Sunday, and B, recognizes the contributions and importance of maple syrup producers and their family in the state of Maine. So there you have it. That's the whole bill. The Senate is not just a bunch of crooked war criminals. They take the time to really appreciate the important things in our country. Give them the proper respect that they deserve. Thanks so much for watching. Check the links in the description to find merch, socials, and other episodes. Buy some Blood of Tyrants wine. Download Streamlabs Ultra. Check out Craft and Business Services. And don't forget to like and share this video all over the place to keep your network informed. Thanks again. And until next time. Keep up the fight.
Shut up and sit down.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You still have distrust there.
We all come from very different places.
Man, we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
You deserve better.
People have to have the information in front of them.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
There you go. Just promote people who are doing something.
Volunteer to work with people who you like and
take an issue that's important to you and do something.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only.
Fight for liberty.
This is the cherry on top.
Open source broadcast system with guests, cameras, and multi-streaming built right in. The online dashboard helps you create logos, thumbnails, overlays, merch store, a website, and more, all with more than $19 a month or $149 a year. That's less than Restream or Shopify, let alone them combined. So for that one low price, you get just about everything you need to run a successful podcast, gaming stream, vlog, whatever you're doing. And if you click the link in the description, you get $9 off your first month or $10 off your first year. So go on over, check out Streamlabs Ultra. They're pretty cool. But without further ado, we have an awesome guest for you tonight, the founder and chair of the Classical Liberal Caucus, Mr. Jonathan Casey. Welcome to the show. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, your sound was a little bit. Yes, there we go. All right, so I always like to start off with a little bit of an intro question. So I'm curious, what was the catalyst that got you to actually join the Libertarian Party? Nice. I can definitely relate. I also was a Gary Johnson supporter that brought me in. I think the party's gone, like, a lot of people can have differing opinions on this, but I think the party's come a long way since then to be, a lot more popular. A lot more people know what's going on, who they are, like they know the name. Even if it's a mediocre opinion of us, they at least know who we are. And like a lot of that's thanks to Gary, but like a lot of that's thanks to the work of people since him.
Yeah, it's hard because a lot of us are inside the Libertarian Party bubble, right? So we're very hyper focused on what's going on inside the party. So it's hard to know what the general world around us kind of thinks. But I mean, like, for example, my brother-in-law, who's a lifelong Republican pastor, he told me that he voted for Jo Jorgensen in the last election, and this was despite her being pro-choice. He's like, I just couldn't bring myself to vote for Hillary or Biden because I just or Biden or Trump. He's just like, I didn't have an option, so I voted for Jo Jorgensen. I just couldn't bring myself to do anything else. And so that's an anecdotal story, but it does feel like we do have a bit more name recognition now.
Yeah.
Especially with these past elections. I know that after the 2020 election, I kind of I searched for a lot of tweets that showed at first, because at the beginning everybody thought that Trump was going to win for a bit there, and then so all the Biden supporters were blaming Joe Jorgensen for costing them the election, and then about like halfway through the night, it all completely shifts, and it's all the Trump supporters blaming Joe Jorgensen for costing Trump the election, which is just a funny thing that they've got to find somebody to blame, which I love. I think that's great. Blame us all you want. We'll take all that blame. The more blame we can take, we'll take it.
Yeah, I've always loved the. I don't know if you saw there was a picture taken at a Georgia GOP meeting a little after Shane Hazel forced the runoff down there, and there was like a list of like the things that they did wrong in the election that like cost them the election, and in that list, 3 of those things were somewhat related to Shane. And the very last thing was like the behavior of our candidates or something like that. Like who we actually chose. The last.
I think I maybe it wasn't that list, but it was at least one of these lists that I've seen where it was just letting libertarians on the ballot. And a lot of people, before they get involved with the Libertarian Party, they don't realize what a massive amount of barriers Republicans and Democrats put up. They throw up tons. I mean, here in Texas, we've had to sue our way onto the ballot every 2 years because we'll sue our way onto the ballot, we'll win, then they'll change the law, and we have to sue all over again. So we're having to raise $50,000-$60,000 every 2 years just to stay on the ballot. We've won ballot access. We've got ballot access, but we can't keep it because they keep changing the law to make it harder and just suck up our funds. And it's a challenging. A lot of people don't realize what a challenging aspect of it. And at least in Texas, we can do that. We don't have to go out like in Tennessee. You've got to get like 50,000 signatures and have them verified just to get on the ballot. So you've got a huge uphill climb in some of these states that are intentionally designed to be as hard as possible and cause as much pain as possible.
Yeah, at least in Texas, you guys are winning those lawsuits. We've tried the last couple times over here in New York to sue ourselves onto the ballot and failed. So I think watching, I mentioned about like kind of the progression of the party since Gary Johnson in 2016, and it has seemed a steady uphill climb for the entirety of my membership in the LP until Larry Sharpe didn't make it on the ballot last year. Like that was probably like one of the hardest like losses that I've faced politically, which is saying something. I'm a fucking libertarian. We lose everything we do. But that loss that almost broke me, to be perfectly honest with you, especially since it was, within the same week as Reno, that like I didn't have too much of a stake in the game as far as how Reno went. That's why I wasn't there. But because of that, and then plus Larry not making it on the ballot, I was just like, is this even worth it? But of course, the LP pulled me back in quickly.
Yeah, and that was tough. I have a lot of friends up in New York, Thomas Queter, a bunch of people in Manhattan. And it's tough because they put a lot of effort into that ballot access run, and it just came up short with being challenged. These signatures being challenged. So that's a tough way to lose. Like it's one thing to go in and not get get as many votes as you thought you were getting, but to just have the courts come in and say nope, we're throwing all these signatures out. Too bad, so sad. Go home. That's a tough way to go out. But I think that there's a large value in the Libertarian Party just from the fact that there's no other liberty organization that could put candidates in front of voters to speak a liberty message. There's no organization that is designed to put candidates in front of voters. And, yes, some candidates speak to the state level or national level, but even local level, it's really valuable for these candidates to speak a libertarian message when they've got the contrasting message of Republicans and Democrats saying, here's how we will fix everything. Libertarian message is, here's how you can fix everything. And that's really valuable. Like we've got some great local candidates here in the DFW area. One of them who'll go to talk to parents of people who are in jail, and basically any type of community events along those lines, and actually talk to them and say, hey, here's how we can actually fix these problems in our communities. And I think that that's a really valuable asset that no other libertarian organization can really accomplish, is get those, again, get candidates in front of voters. And like, regardless of whether you think that winning elections is good or bad, that in and of itself is a valuable thing.
Yeah. Absolute biggest critique, we're just gonna jump right into this shit. My absolute biggest critique of the Mises Caucus is like the thing that I've been saying to them since the very beginning is like, if you don't want to run elections, why would you ever join the political system at all? Like, there's so much more paperwork, so much more like meetings if you don't want to run like a political party, like for the sake of elections specifically. Like, just go do something where you don't have to learn Robert's rules, where you don't have to know what the FEC is, where you don't have to do any of this other bullshit. Do the same thing, because activists and public speakers and like figureheads, and what Spike Cohen is doing now with You Are the Power is just as important as what he was doing as the VP candidate. But he doesn't have to file. I mean, he's got a PAC, so he still has to file. And you get to have so much more freedom with it. You don't have to worry about the caucus dramas or the like state and county affiliates getting all haywire, and you don't have to worry about the problem of a decentralized, centralized unit. Just go do something else.
Well, I think a lot of them do see a value in running candidates. I think that they have they're a bit too focused on local candidates. They don't realize how many candidates are down ballot. So when you only run if you only run locally, you're not going to get much traction. You've got to run up and down the ballot so that you can actually have people at the top that pull others to vote for them, right? That maybe who gets excited about their city council member? But if they got a governor, a libertarian governor that they're excited to vote for, they'll go in and vote for the rest of the libertarians on the ballot. So you have to focus on these bigger races, just because that's how our election system works. That's what gets people motivated. Nobody gets excited about a state house run. But if you can have a senator like Chase Oliver last election forcing the runoff, he can get those libertarians to the ballot and to the polling offices and actually get them to checkmark the libertarian name, regardless of where, how high or low that office is. Just getting people to the polls is a really valuable thing, because then once we actually can show that we've got that clout, then other politicians have to look at it as well and say, wait a second, why are they voting for the libertarians and not for us? And that's another, a secondary add to the liberty movement, is actually showing that these policies, these ideas can win votes. And the more we can show that, the more that Republicans and Democrats have to pay attention to.
The goal is to like change the conversation about politics back to local politics, which I think is a very like valiant kind of effort, which is how I've heard a lot of them kind of talk about it, and why the focus is that. It's kind of like a practice what you preach sort of thing. In a lot of their minds is why they're running local, and I love that. But you can have a top of the ticket candidate running on that. You could have them run where the only thing they talk about is the other candidates running in the state. That could be their entire campaign, is like, we need to stop focusing on statewide politics. There's no reason that me as the governor should be telling every single county what to do. But here's some county legislators that actually should have that power, who I'm going to give the power back to them if elected. And then, so you should actually care about these elections. So go care about these elections, and here's candidates. Like, you could run that campaign. It'd be a great campaign, especially in a state like, people in the South especially would resonate with that kind of a message. So you can do a both and kind of thing there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, right now we've got a lot of Republicans especially are really, and Democrats in some states, but a lot of Republicans are really taking hard stances against such things as sanctuary cities, or they're really, like in Florida, I know that they're pushing down a lot of top-down control on local area. I mean, look at what DeSantis is doing with Disney, for example. You've got this, and this happens in Democrats too, just in different areas, but you've got this idea that the state should be, it's pushing things up to the state, when in reality, we want to push things, all the power authority back down to the locality as much as you can, because they have there's less problems if you have one if somebody makes a decision for the entire state. Well, if it's a bad decision, the impact's quite wide, broader. But if we have local areas making those decisions, we can kind of use them as test cases and scenarios of what works and what doesn't. For example, you've got like in some places that have really extensive zoning laws. A lot of people don't realize how much zoning laws can actually cause your property taxes, your property expenses, all those to skyrocket. Some places have 5 times more parking spaces it's like 50 times more parking spaces than cars. It's like, okay, let's let businesses decide how many parking spaces there are, because I know in my neighborhood, if I go out to the main road, you've got a Hobby Lobby and you've got a Bed Bath & Beyond and you've got a few places. Those parking lots are never more than a third full. Never more than a third full. And I'm thinking that is wasted space that the government has told those businesses, you have to have that for parking. Well, it's completely useless space. Let's let the businesses and the property owners decide whether or not they will need that parking in the first place. Not to mention, I want a Whataburger that's closer to me. Exactly. Oh, I can't hear you right now for some reason. I can't hear you right now. I know you said at the beginning you had said you had some audio troubles, but yeah, no, I'm not hearing anything right now. It doesn't look like it's sending anything. Oh, there we go. I can hear you now.
There we go. All right. Sorry about that.
All good. Your mouth was moving and I wasn't hearing anything. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, I could make some stuff up.
My USB.
Yes, how's the weather in your neck of the woods?
My USB splitter decided it wanted to disconnect randomly. So
Gotcha.
it wouldn't be a real Fight for Liberty stream if there wasn't a significant amount of technical difficulty. I think it's the state trying to shut down our super pro liberty messaging. Or you can believe it's, whichever group you want that'll make you like donate and support the show. So tell me in the party. I honestly don't know much about like the positions that you've held. So I know when I first joined, I was kind of thrust into
I don't know that I call it a rise so much as a fall, but we'll go over it. No, so yeah, after the Joe Jorgensen campaign, I wanted to get more involved in the Libertarian Party, so I reached out to them to volunteer, and I knew the vice chair of the party down there, and I got thrown onto the social media, the Twitter account. Ran that for a year and a half, had a blast, had fun. But one of the things I realized is that in messaging, the party's messaging doesn't really get people into the door. It doesn't really bring people in to sign up to membership. It doesn't really affect it. It can certainly push people away, and it does bring some people in. But it wasn't really, we were growing, it was the fastest or largest, it had the most growth of any state affiliate Twitter account, but I didn't feel like I was making the biggest impact I could. And I also saw that a lot of times, I kind of predicted, I kind of could see what Reno coming, and I realized there's going to be a lot of classical liberals who aren't going to have a home. And so that's really where I figured I wanted to start the Classical Liberal Caucus, was to really provide a home for classically liberal-minded people to kind of know that there's a place for them, and know that there's still a place in the Libertarian Party for them. And I feel like that's kind of been our main mission, is to make sure that libertarians and classical liberals like myself, a little bit less on the anarchist side, kind of know that there is a place in the party for them, and that they can actually there's a place that's welcoming them. And kind of, it's funny, we kind of get called left libertarians sometimes, which is kind of ironic because I'm extremely socially conservative. But it's kind of ironic. I think that kind of more shows the kind of the skewing of the party towards the right. Kind of makes everyone else look left. But in reality, I don't want. Listen, I don't want the government controlling who comes in and through our borders. I don't want government controlling who goes into bathrooms. So if that makes me a left, okay. If that makes leftist, okay. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically it. We started the CLC at the beginning of last year. And yeah, it's just kind of been going along from there. We've got some plans coming up. We've got some candidate training coming up later this year, and a few other projects that I'm excited about.
Nice. Yeah, I find the like lefty thing really, really amusing sometimes. So I specifically, there was a post from Jeff Charles, I believe it was, on Twitter yesterday.
I got tagged in that a few times.
Yeah, who should I have on as a left libertarian? And I'm like, none of these people are lefties. You're tagging a bunch of like hardcore right-wing capitalists, who just happen to like not be assholes.
that is kind of somewhat true. I mean, it's the nice libertarians have become the left libertarians for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a bit amusing. But to me, a left libertarian is somebody who's kind of a libsock, and I am not a libsock by any stretch of the imagination. I am a born and bred capitalist. I've never been anything but.
Yeah, it's funny. My favorite person that's considered a left libertarian is Brianna Coyle. She's been a good friend of mine for years and years, and a bunch of people refer to her, and she is decidedly economically right of me. We have had multiple like long drawn out nasty arguments about like where I'm taking a left economic stance on something and being like, maybe government run thing shouldn't be demolished first, or like, I'm taking some sort of like actual left economic stance that I believe, because I'm not all the way on the right of the quadrant. There are some, if government exists, blank should be, because it just makes life easier to market.
But yeah, that one is funny. I think that I think a lot of people think that the divide between the right and the left libertarian is on the social issues, where it's okay to say gay rights or trans rights or whatever kind of rights, and the right libertarians kind of take offense to this idea that there's nothing but, that there's something other than individual rights. And when I argue with people, because my most famous tweet is the trans rights are human rights coming from LP Texas. That one went crazy, went wild, and with the aftermath was quite fun. But I think that a lot of people got offended by that idea that the only rights are individual rights. Well, who makes up these groups? Who makes up gays? Who makes up trans? These are people. These are individuals. And so when people are collectivized by the state, and like they are with the trans movement right now, Governor DeSantis just passed a bathroom bill, or they're about to pass a bathroom bill, or there's other places where they're banning transgender health care for adults. So yes, when the state targets a group of people merely by their identity, I'm gonna talk about their rights as as part of that identity. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about trans rights or gay rights because that is what they're being targeted for. That makes me a left libertarian. Okay.
Yeah,
I've given up caring about what people call me. You run a state affiliate Twitter. You stop caring what people call you.
That's fair. That's probably better for your mental health too. Yeah, I feel like what you'll find is that the people that have a problem with it have a fundamental disagreement with something that you said which is, who makes up these groups? What are trans people? They're humans. I think they're gonna have a disagreement with that part, and that's why they get so offended. But I'm gonna lose quite a few followers for saying that. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, saying trans rights are human rights got a lot of people riled up, but that is, it's not giving them extra rights. It's saying that their trans rights are human rights. They're all rights. All rights are equal. That's what it's saying.
Yeah. I do think that there is, just to, I guess, switch to a devil's advocate stance here, there is something to be said of, like, that some people are trying to add rights for some of these marginalized groups. And so when you say a blanket statement like that, they can incorrectly, if they know who you are and what you stand for, but can assume that you are talking about the same trans rights that many popular progressives are talking about, which is kind of an above and beyond, they should get special treatment and this and that. If you're defending like affirmative action as a libertarian stance, then like you're objectively wrong. And I feel like that's part of the problem, is that there's these rights in a crazy way that makes them that's actually like derogatory towards them and typically racist. But so I guess that's, I understand why some people get confused by that you're not meaning just basic fucking human rights, you're meaning what these other crazy progressives are saying.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry, but you don't have a right to be protected by government from the wrong pronoun. Like, that's just not, listen, I will go after it. I will not associate with people who intentionally misgender people or use the wrong pronouns just to be an asshole. Like, I don't care. I don't want to have anything to do with you. But that's not the government's role ever. Like that is a pathway you do not want to go down. Trust me, you can see it all over the place and throughout history. It is a path that's very dangerous once government starts enforcing speech.
Yeah, that's why, like, I think he's gone into some dark places since. But when Jordan Peterson first became super popular for opposing that bill in Canada, like, that was 100% a libertarian stance, and I saw a lot of left libertarians, shitting on Jordan Peterson for that take, and I think that he is 100% in the right there, And then I honestly think Peterson specifically got pushed into kind of a camp of more hatred and disdain for that community because he was called a transphobe for the last half a decade. You kind of end up becoming one when you get called one that much.
Yeah, we see this with a lot of influencers, and I've seen this particularly with liberty influencers, where they will kind of, part of it is you're chasing the crowd, right? You're trying to say what the crowd wants to hear. And so I think that influences a lot of what influencers say. So you'll say things you don't necessarily believe, and then over time you just kind of start to adopt that as your belief, right? So you're looking for that approval from your audience. And well, who was Jordan Peterson's audience? Well, at the beginning, you're right, he really came off as kind and considerate, but very worried about these bills and laws that were being passed in Canada. And so that was something I really appreciated and saw. But you're right, it really began down this path of I think he kind of chased his audience into where he would kind of go down that transphobic path of making it more than just about free speech, about making it about people being lesser than or kind of not necessarily transphobic is maybe a strong word, but I think that he definitely denigrates people because of their identity, which I think, I mean, that is transphobic. I mean, I don't know how else to define it. It is what it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, he kind of got into the culture, and when lines got drawn, it was pretty clear which side he was on. And then the kind of duopoly of culture was formed, and you have that same like spreading apart that happened much faster than it did with the like Republican Democrat duopoly, where people just kind of got pulled, and even good people, like with the political duopoly, say a Ron or Rand Paul, they're getting pulled into things they really shouldn't be pulled into because they have to. There's nowhere else for them to go. If you are as popular as Jordan Peterson is, you can't be a real libertarian. You can't be an actual middle ground person. You can't stay out of the culture war. You would lose your entire audience. It's the only thing anybody wants to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've always had culture wars in the U.S. They've always been around, but I think social media has really blown it out of proportion and really, put it on the forefront of a lot of people's minds, because we've always had these fights, we've always had these arguments, we've always been in these conflicts as any society has these conflicts. But I think that the social media has definitely exacerbated a lot of these things and really made a lot of people need to touch grass, frankly, myself included.
I actually made a tweet today because I took my son to the park, and so probably like 2 hours ago, and I like took a picture of my hand in the grass and just tweeted it. Like 10 out of 10 would recommend.
There you go. Yeah.
So,
oh man.
Way more people need to touch grass, and and other humans. Like I feel like, not to be vulgar, but like so many people would be way better at this if they could just get some pussy. Like they would just chill the fuck out and live a much better life.
It's this weird. Young men are in a weird spot. They really, I mean, like some of these like for example, Andrew Tate. Like, let's bring up the exact opposite of what you're talking about. Someone who is the worst role model, who denigrates women, who just has, no redeeming value that I've ever been able to identify. It's all bluster. It's all bluff. My mic is slowly coming down here. I just realized it's just kind of slowly creeping into view here. Let's go ahead and put off of that. That's funny. I wasn't paying attention. It reminded me, I don't know, it feels like that should be something from, what is it, Top Gun, or no, what's that, oh my goodness, I can't remember that movie. Anyways, where there's like a boom mic that slowly enters the scene and it gets hit by it. I cannot remember the name of that movie, but it's...
I'm spacing on it too. This is why I always podcast stoned, but every once in a while
there you go. But yeah, I think that young men are just in a really bad spot these days. There's really no real role model. I can't say that. Real role models out there for them to really look up to. There was a time where you could kind of look up to the politicians, right? That was kind of accepted. You could kind of look up to some sports stars and stuff like that. But I really feel like it's really desolate, and I don't know that. Maybe this just recency bias or not having a real historical perspective on this kind of issue, but who are young men going to look to really to get the most out of life and have a fulfilling life? I don't know. I'm glad for me that I had a father who was a captain in the Marines, but he was a sweetheart. Like, he was the softest guy I've ever met, but he was disciplined. He told me how to be disciplined, how to work hard, how to respect my wife, how to respect my mom. Oh, that was the one rule. You could not disrespect your mother.
Oh,
like,
never.
I was never allowed. That was the one line I knew I could never cross. But that was good. That's a good thing. Young men should be taught how to respect their mother, because that's how they're going to treat their wives one day. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where young men are going to look for those role models anymore. And that's I don't know. That's been something I've been thinking about for a while.
Yeah, because for the longest time, Jordan Peterson was a legitimate person, and still is, in my opinion.
He had some great advice. So
much. If anyone doesn't like Jordan Peterson that's watching this and thinks that he doesn't have redeeming qualities, I implore you to watch. There's 3 episodes of him on Russell Brand's show. They're all like an hour and a half each. Those are 3 of my favorite podcast episodes in existence, because Jordan and Russell are equidistant to the right and left of me. I feel like point that's like libertarian. It's like perfect. Like them together makes like the perfect libertarian, and they're great episodes. So I would highly encourage that. But I don't know, even like I have a couple of friends who highly regard Stefan Molyneux for his like parenting stuff. Like he had great like podcasts and articles and books and all these other things about like how to be a good parent, and like I have a lot of friends that were really into that pre Charlottesville and like some friends that are
I'm not aware of that at all.
Still kind of into it post Charlottesville, because like it's still they can kind of separate the work from the artist and whatnot, but like there's so many people who have amazing like ideas and thought processes in a specific field. If they were allowed to stick to that field, they would be amazing. But now you can't be like Peterson's not allowed to just be a psychologist. He's also an immunologist and a whole bunch of other things. And like I don't support any of the COVID BS, and like I'm with him on all of that, but like that shouldn't be what he's talking about. He should be talking about nuclear family and a fulfilling life. And like if he was able to just shoot that.
Yeah, some of his early advice was so spot on. That, I mean, it's a cliche, but clean your room. Take care of yourself first before you think you can take care of others. It's good advice. It's just one of those things that young men have to kind of learn on their own, I guess, which is kind of a shame. But I think eventually we all have to do that. We all have to do that eventually. It's just a matter of whether or not we're better or worse prepared for it, right?
Yeah.
Because man, I knew that when I first got married, I was not prepared for it.
Oh no, I thought I was. I'm coming up on my 1 year anniversary is in 18 days. So
oh wow, congratulations!
Like it's almost. I'm almost done with that first year, and I'm like, holy shit, this is not what I thought I was signing up for. In some ways, it is so much better than what I thought I was signing up for. In some ways, it's like way more of a headache. But it's fine. She doesn't watch my show.
Yeah, I'm on my. This is we just had our 12th, we just had our 12th. So it's been a while, but yeah, it's one of those things you learn. I don't know. It's a journey, and you have to look at it as a journey and not just a destination. A lot of people look at it as a destination. You get to marriage, there you go. No, there's a lot more. There's a whole life ahead of you.
Yeah,
and you just have to take it day by day and figure out how to interact with each other and communicate with each other. And it's a constant journey. I don't want to say struggle, but it is a struggle sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'll say journey just to be polite.
Men are a little bit screwed right now. But young women, she's not as popular as Jordan Peterson. Model you could possibly have. She's just an amazing human.
We need to get her to go up against that Pearl girl. I don't even know who that person is. That Pearl, she's on. I've seen like clips. I'm just scrolling through my feed. She pops up and she's like this. Almost anti-feminist, but kind of like it's a weird thing. It's like she wants to be a trad wife of an anti-feminist, and it's kind of like she says things like she blames everything on women, and it's like one of those things that only young men are going to listen to and think that there's women out here who think like this, which there really isn't. But yeah, no, Ovens is fantastic. We need to get her more on the public stage.
Yeah,
for sure.
Agreed. So you've talked about it a little bit, but just give me like an elevator pitch for what is the Classical Liberal Caucus.
We are we're a caucus within the Libertarian Party that's working to promote classical liberal values, kind of professionalism, and inside the Libertarian Party to kind of bring up leaders in the liberty movement. There's a big mission that we have is to bring up leaders within the party so that we can kind of pass them on and say, hey, go run for your state board or your state chair or even national LNC to kind of influence the party and kind of work towards building up the party and move it towards that. And really our focus is on those practical real world applications of liberty. So if you go to If you go to wiki.lpclc.org, that will bring up our policy guide. So we've got a bunch, about 50 different policy ideas for local. We're trying to focus more on local on those, because everybody talks about national policies and statewide policies, but we try to focus a little bit on a little bit more local stuff. And we've got a team working on trying to build that up, especially over the next year before the next election. So we can get, so hey, Libertarian candidates, if you need policy ideas, here's a website you can go to, pull whatever you need from this. We've kind of already done some research for you, and you can kind of use that as a launching point to build a resource, a guide for a candidates platform. Because everyone knows we need to end the Fed. Everyone knows we need to end the wars. But when it comes down to a lot of our policy guides are about, our policy ideas are about zoning and getting rid of a lot of burdens that people have. I mean, in some places you can't even have a chicken in your yard, and that, like, come on, let's change that. If there's one thing we can do, is we can move towards more individual freedom just in your backyard. We don't realize how many of those freedoms have been taken away. Until you actually want to do it, and then you realize, wait a second, I'm not allowed to have to build a chicken coop in my backyard. Like, I get it if you have roosters crowing every morning, right? There's a bit of a nuisance factor there, but chickens, come on now.
I actually it's funny, I'm like slowly turning my wife into a libertarian, and if she ever heard me say that, she'd hate me, but because she's very like apolitical, but every time something happens that I get to go on a little mini rant, she becomes just like a little bit more libertarian. And the most recent one, I love that you brought it up, was we have to pay a yearly licensing fee to our city if we want chickens.
Really?
Yeah, it's like $25 a year, so it's not like the worst thing in the world, but it's standpoint is it's absolutely like intolerable. And we're renting from my dad, so he's the landlord, so that's the person that I called to be like, permission, and my dad was like, as long as it's legal, that's fine, but I don't know what the rules are there, because out in the country nearby, and so he's never owned property here and actually lived here, and so I had to look it up, and yeah, and I was like, not so fast. We live in the communist hellhole called New York.
Do they have inspections? Like, what's the $25 supposedly for?
I have no idea.
Because usually they justify it with some kind of, we need to have some kind of inspections. I don't know what they would inspect for chickens, but that's crazy. That's really strange.
To make sure that we have like a functional coop, maybe, because we cannot have free range either. That is a complete no. So we have to have a coop, and we have to have that coop like licensed.
Gotcha. Interesting.
To like square footage per chicken and all that other stuff that like.
Okay.
So I don't know. Yeah, maybe they'll send somebody out to.
You can't set up a butchery.
Probably not. Although I would love to.
There you go.
Like we're definitely going like full anarchist. We'll pay the licensing fee because my dad's gonna make us, but we're definitely selling these eggs on the black market, get more chickens, and do some fun things because I'm sick of playing their games.
Yeah, we remodeled our house here in Dallas, and the city that we're in is notorious for its code enforcement. Mm-hmm. So we had to go through all of the shenanigans, city inspections, all this stuff. We get to the final one with the certificate occupancy, where they come in, they do one final check through the house, and they've already done all the plumbing, all the electrical, all of that's done. So the final guy, my mom met him here. My mom met him here because I was working that day, and the inspector comes in, walks in the door, goes, I'm feeling good today. You guys pass. Signs the paperwork, hands it to my mom, and walks out the door. It's like, okay, I guess we'll take it. I'm not complaining. But it just kind of shows you kind of a scam, guys.
Yeah. If that can happen, and then some other sorry sap gets bitched him out earlier that day or something, you know, that
right,
stuff like that
taking
is,
it out on somebody.
yeah. And you know that stuff happens. You can't like blame people necessarily for doing that kind of stuff. Like, it's human nature to take your anger out on something that is, you know, less problematic to take your anger out on, like, especially if it's like a family member or a friend, or handling into somebody you're probably never gonna see again. That's normal.
Yeah, just let's not have it backed by state force, okay?
Right.
I don't want them to shut down my I don't want them to shut down my remodeling project because they had a bad day.
Right, that's the thing. Like, the people that are like the movement of, like, you know, people are evil, so therefore we have to have a government to control them that's made up of people who are evil, so therefore, you know, and you have the circular logic there.
Yeah, well, James Madison originally, I think it was James Madison who said that we have, you know, people are not angels, so we need government. But the conservatives never repeat the second part, and it's because men are not angels. We need to have limited government, right? And so they always forget that second part. They always like to quote the first part, and then they always forget about the second part.
Yep.
Guys, come on. Gotta do the whole thing, the whole quote.
Yeah.
Limited as much as we can.
So I have to say, like, I've really enjoyed, especially early on, like, a lot of things that I've seen come out of the Classical Liberal Caucus. I talked to Josh about, because he kind of was trying to pitch me and, you know, be like, oh, you should be one of us, and I'm like, I'm not. We won, and I feel like one structure within the party, one of the few good things, is that it actually enables people to decentralize a little bit further, without having to butt heads with people that they disagree with every step of the way. And so I think the fact that there is a Classical Liberal Caucus and a Radical Caucus, complete benefit of the party, where people who are radical anarchists are able to do radical anarchisty things, and classical liberals can do classical liberally things, and they're all making the party better and stronger, and we're all bringing people into the party, but we don't have to argue about whether or not the party should be libertarian or anarchist, because it shouldn't fucking matter.
Yeah. The party should just be a structure for libertarians of any stripe to come together, get candidates on the ballot, and be able to vote for them. That's really, boil it down, that's what the party should be. And I, you know, let's fight like hell through convention, but when the work needs to be done, let's put those differences aside, get our candidates on the ballot, get them as much exposure as we can. And for the record, I mean, we have a bunch of anarchists in the Classical Liberal Caucus, for the record. We've got, you know, what I like to say is the differentiating factor is is the direction we want to see the party going. Mm-hmm. Is more professional, more a bit more focused on the basics. I think is really what it boils down to. Yeah. You know, there's dangers in overextending what the Libertarian Party can do into different movements, into different different projects, but it really needs to focus on the things that only it can do, and that's get candidates on the ballot. Mm-hmm. And I think that we, you know, we talked about how one of the reasons why I left the LP Texas was to start the CLC, but it was also that I'll go back to mentioning to what I was talking about, how I didn't really feel like I was making the biggest impact I could, and the people who make the biggest impact are the candidates. They're the ones who go out there and actually talk to people. They're the Spike Cohens, the Jorgensens, the Gary Johnsons. They're the ones who really bring people into the movement. What the party says and does is really secondary to what the candidates do. So as long as the party is there to make sure the candidates can do what the candidates need to do, that's really all that matters, and that's really what the party should be focused on. Is to make sure that they're the best support structure that the candidates can have. Yeah, because you want it. You know, we need a dozen more Spike Cohens. I know they're not out there, but well, we need a dozen more Spike Cohen types to be out there talking to people, and it needs to be it needs to be the whole range of libertarianism. We need a classically liberal Spike Cohen. We need a libsoc Spike Cohen. We need I know he's an anarchist, but he speaks really well to everyone. He always learns where people are coming from before he tries to persuade. He doesn't really try to persuade anybody. Before he tries to talk to people, he always knows where they're coming from. So he always knows how to speak directly to that person and take their concerns and their considerations. A lot of times as libertarians, we sit there and we talk we say what we want to hear. That's not what we should be saying. We need to say what the other person needs to hear, not what we want to hear.
Yeah, 100%. No one's benefiting by us acting like actual politicians. Like, I'm all for the like professionalism and everything else, but
right,
they should care about and what they should believe in and what they should vote for and what needs to happen if you're elected. That is not how politics works. And as every shitty duopoly politician, in a way that they also don't give a shit about representing their constituents, and that's completely antithetical to what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, you need to. When I say professional, I don't mean that you be buttoned up and give canned responses to everything, right? When I mean professional, it means you have all your ducks in a row. Everything that you need to have in a row. You've got a bank account, you've got a website, you've got all the things that you should have. You've got a professional media approach. You're not going around cussing people out on social, those type of things. It doesn't mean you need to have a suit and tie on at every single event and talk and literally just repeat 10 talking points everywhere you go. That it could be considered professional, but it's sure boring professional. Right. You don't have to be boring to be professional. Like that, we put those two things in the same category, and that's just not the case. Spike Cohen, always professional, but he always brings his points across and always lands his points. I think, and because he's professional, if he was out there cussing and cursing at everyone, it wouldn't really land the same, and he wouldn't be able to have as many doors open to him. And I don't think he would have gotten nearly as big as he has. Yeah. So I think that. Sorry,
I'll let you finish.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, even when dealing with like evil, tyrannical state actors, Spike is kind and like super genuine, and I think that's a big reason, like you're saying, that he's got the following that he does and the respect that he does, because he doesn't go after people that don't deserve it, and so when he goes after someone, you know that they deserve it. And you can get behind him. Like if I ever see Spike Cohen comment on like a
they
Facebook
messed
page,
up.
Right. I don't have to read their. Oh, okay. Let's throw onto the ratio. Yeah. Like
exactly. No, he really does a good job of knowing when to dunk and when to hold back. He really does a good job of that, and so you don't. I never have to read his post and go, okay, I need to go look at the story before I agree with it. It's usually 90. I can't recall a time where I read a post and be like, he didn't quite get the story right.
Yeah.
I can't remember a time. Like there's been certainly times that I've disagreed with him on a few things, but never where I've gone like, oh, he didn't understand what was really happening.
Yeah.
He does a really good job.
Yeah, and he definitely, back to what you were originally saying about Spike, like my own personal like growth, because I worked for him for most of 2022 or no 2021 it would have been. There wasn't this binary between authentic and professional, and that because I had been walking that line throughout my entire professional life of like I was this kind of quirky gamer. I play Magic the Gathering, like, but I go to work, I'm in a suit and I'm in a tie, and like I'm very, very good at playing finance bro when I have to at work or something like that. It was the same thing, and I grew up in a very Republican household, and I grew up with just thinking that like if I was to run for office, it needs to include like a suit and a red tie, and and working for Spike, it was like, you can be respected and professional while still being a fucking weirdo. Because, I mean, Spike is, I've said this on the show before, and I will defend it all the time. Spike is weirder than Vermin Supreme. Like, objectively.
Yeah, you might want to bring your mic a little bit closer, but no, I remember he had, when he first got nominated, I didn't know anything about him prior to his nomination as vice presidential candidate, and he had his profile picture of him ripping his shirt open, and I thought, all right, we got this crazy libertarian guy, and he's just gonna embarrass everybody. Yep. And it turns out, I mean, he was the gold nugget from that campaign, right? He was the, you know, Joe did a great job for what she could do, but Spike really kind of stole the show after that election, right? He really kind of kept the momentum that he built up in the election, really impressively kept that momentum, and kind of has carried him through to this day. He's done a really good job, but I had dismissed him of that one profile picture of him. And then I kind of rolled my eyes and go, all right, we just got to. Yep. Joe will just have to put up with this guy, and pretty quickly realized that okay, he's got something to say, and I think that's a lesson in everything. It's like, make sure your first impression is the one you want to create, because even if that's the impression he wanted to create of him ripping his shirt open, fine. But he quickly changed that picture, and we all moved on.
Yeah.
It was
I actually did the exact same thing. I saw Nipplegate happen, and was 100% along the like Prague lines with that one, and was like, who the fuck is this guy? And like you said, I actually really like what he's said about it, because he's explained it as that he was going to get a bunch of shit from Prague, and not even the caucus specifically, but just the more general type of person.
Oh no, I know those Prags. They're all gone now, but I know those Prags.
Right. He's like, to be criticized by these people and nitpicked to oblivion because I'm an anarchist. Bunch of beliefs that they disagree with and that they don't think should be said publicly, as well as I do a bunch of weird things. I'm not a super buttoned up professional person. So he basically went like, before anyone outside of the party was paying, so that basically for the rest of the campaign, even those Prags were like, at least he has a fucking shirt on. And they just drop expectations to the lowest fucking possible for the people within the party, so that he didn't have to deal with internal party drama while he was trying to message to people outside of the party. And I think it worked in hindsight. Like, Joe got dragged through the mud internally, but Spike remained fairly unscathed throughout most of the campaign from internal drama.
Yeah.
He was way.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, she's got that one tweet to her name that ruined everything, right? Yeah. Destroyed all hope.
That one tweet.
Gosh, bunch of hoopla about nothing.
Like Spike going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really funny that she gets a lot more hate for that one tweet than Spike did for all his work with the BLM. I mean, he did a lot of work talking with people.
He got openly endorsed by a BLM chapter.
Yeah.
That endorsed Spike Cohen and his running mate. And somehow Joe was the one getting shit on for capitulating to the left, and I'm like,
right. Oh man, yeah, that was pretty funny. It feels like an eternity ago. That was 3 years ago. You can believe it. That is an eternity ago.
Time flies when the state is growing every second.
Yep, exactly. Do you have any particular favorite candidate for 24, or you kind of do you have any opinions on it? What are you thinking?
So I'm actually trying to put together some sort of a thing with the candidates that have announced so far. Where but my co-host kind of backed out a little bit. We can talk after about who that is and why. But so it might be more of a forum style thing if it's just me. And of the four major, because Hornberger's in there too, my current favorite, I had him on the show not too long ago. He's the one who I've talked to the most recently, so take my opinion with that grain of salt, because I like all of them for the most part, and I'm not so sure about Rodriguez. There's some issues there, but I need to check. Or I like them all. I like Hornberger. I like Lars. I like Chase. I've worked with him. I've been friends with Chase for a long time. He's a great guy. You know, I like them all, but kind of way that he carries himself and kind of aura, I believe to be probably our best move of those people. I'm obviously still holding out for like a Justin Amash or a Spike Cohen before I really throw my hat in the ring. And
I think a lot of people are. That's the number one thing. It's right now from everyone that I'm hearing from, it's either Chase, Oliver, or Mike Termott, or somebody to be named.
Yeah.
So I think people are waiting.
I will say, from an active presidential campaign, or to an active presidential campaign, the only one that I would give is Afroman 2024. Because
wait, say that again.
Afroman 2024, all the way.
Oh, there you go.
Like I think that campaign could do some amazing things, and I would love to volunteer for him and work with him because honestly, I have so much more faith in that campaign than anything the party could put out.
Not Joe Exotic? Come on now. Oh man, that whole thing. Goodness sakes, that guy.
Yeah.
Oof.
I actually ratioed the fuck out of Joe Exotic like 2 weeks ago. It was great. Like a 10-to-1 ratio of like my comment to his post, which is insane because he's Joe Exotic and I had like 3,000 followers. But he came in nasty from the get-go, and that like he felt like the kind of be like, we deserve your party line because we're somehow better than you, and it's like, no, fuck off. He else running in your party, so I should have the line, even though I'm a gun girl.
Roll the red carpet out for me, please.
No.
Even though I'm in jail and won't be able to walk down it, roll it out for me.
Yeah, no, I didn't like that one from the get-go. When he said libertarian, I was like, oh, that's kind of nice, and then
yeah, I never watched the show Tiger
Me either.
King. I probably should just to do it, but yeah, that just had so many. I just have flashbacks to different debates in Libertarian Party history. I'm just thinking about what he would be saying during those debates, and I'm like, ugh, don't really want that. I do not want that at all.
So I have to ask you the same question now, though. He hasn't backed anybody officially yet, right?
No. So our process for that is the board will endorse somebody, and then our membership will vote on whether or not to accept that endorsement. So that's just kind of how we have it set up.
I like that.
From personal perspective, I would Chase Oliver is my guy. But I'm friends with Mike Termott as well, and Mike is a member of Mike and Chase and Lars are all members of the CLC. I don't know about the other two. Oh yeah, Hornberger no, and Joshua Rodriguez is not. So just if anybody cares.
Nice.
But no, I met Mike and Reno. We've had a couple phone calls since then. I like Mike a lot.
Yeah,
we could do far worse than Mike for sure.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of times when there's a primary going on, within the party, my headspace is, who would my dad like the most? Because he is my dad has voted for Larry Sharp twice and for Johnson in 2016 and Jorgensen. So I have won him over on every major election since I joined the party. Some of them have been harder than others, and none of them have been able to convince him to join the party or even lift a finger for a campaign, which my dad's not a super political guy, so there's been no one that's been able to actually last weekend, or this past weekend for the first time, which was cool, and got to like kind of ask him like real questions and get a real-time response. But I think someone like that Gen X is looking for. I think if we reach out to Gen X, we can fund the next couple cycles a little bit better. As much as I would love to reach out to people my age, we're all fucking broke.
True, it's true. I like the idea of having a younger candidate when you've got two senile old bastards sitting up there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we should be having it's like one of those sitcoms with two, I would love to see a Biden and Trump debate, just because Trump would just be trying to throw crap at Biden, and Biden wouldn't know what was going on.
Yeah, they both deteriorated so much over the last few years since they debated for the last election. It would be so much worse this time, which is why both of them. Trump is already refusing to debate Biden, which is insane because he doesn't even have the nomination. But
do you think? I keep going back and forth on whether, like, I know the polling says Trump, but I always, man, it looked like DeSantis was going to give Trump a run for his money, and I don't know. It's such a weird dynamic because I just don't understand. I don't understand Republican politics anymore. Like, it used to be so predictable and so just run of the mill, and it's just kind of gone all over the place. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to look at. I'm like, well, okay, who are we gonna run against? And it's like, Trump again? Really?
Right. Yeah, I think that like Mitt Romney was the clear, obvious choice in 2012, right? Like we could kind of tell that from the get-go. That was the first election I really paid too much attention to. And it happened, and there were other contenders and whatnot, but like it was clear from I think he was the best choice, honestly. Like, I was a big fan of Mitt Romney when he ran. He kind of got me into politics, and I was like, I'm gonna be a businessman and then a politician like Mitt Romney. And then Trump came along and fucked it all up.
Mitt Romney made me promise never. I made a promise. I voted. So in 2008, it was between McCain and Obama. And I looked at the two, and I'm like, one's really bad on foreign policy, but he's okay on economic policy, and the other one's bad on economic policy, but he says he's going to get us out of the wars. It's like so I didn't even bother voting in 2008 between Romney or between McCain and Obama, because I just was like, they're both bad, they're both meh on some things, so I just didn't even bother. And then in 2012. I went in and voted for Mitt Romney, and I was so disgusted with myself that I walked out of that polling booth and I was like, I will never vote for anybody I don't actually believe in again, and I haven't since. Nice. So that I just felt so disgusted with myself that I went in and chose Mitt Romney. I wasn't going to choose Obama, but I just was like, why did I do that? Why? And I just was like, I will never do that again, and sure enough, I haven't.
Luckily, I
haven't yet.
Vote that I regret, and that is in 2016, I voted for Chuck Schumer over Alex Merced.
Oh no, that's painful.
Oh yeah.
Did you even know who Alex Merced was?
I didn't, and that's why I didn't vote at the time, and I'd never met Alex Merced. So like in my mind, one of these people actually like has come up to central New York and done things that I've seen, which from an upstate New Yorker, like Schumer shit about the whole state. Okay. So like I grew up kind of liking him for that reason. Like every governor only cares about Albany and New York, and like Clinton was my other senator for quite some time. Like she never left the city and was usually in DC, and like I don't think she's ever touched my town in her entire life. So I liked Schumer for that reason, and I had just kind of started really caring about shit. And yeah, we'll forever regret that, because Alex Merced became one of my good friends, and I'm like, fuck, dude.
No. Oh, you had to look him in the eye and say, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
Oh, yeah.
I just remembered the movie where the boom mic is in his Naked Gun.
Okay.
That I was like, that's been bothering me this whole time. It was Naked Gun. I gotta go back and rewatch those. Those are classics.
Archie's fucking roasting me in the comments for voting.
Voted for Schumer. Oh, that's great. Oh yeah, that's painful. At least, yeah, that's rough. Oof. Yeah, that's one of the worst you could probably do. At least you didn't vote for Clinton, but man.
Yeah. Thankfully, she was gone. So,
like Dianne Feinstein might be the only one that's worse. The only name that's worse besides Hillary Clinton, Dianne Feinstein. That one might be worse.
Yeah.
Than Schumer. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, he went on to be. It wasn't quite the power he has now, because the Democrats didn't have a Senate majority for most of the time that I cared about politics. And so now I'm just like, why did I do that? Not that my vote will ever matter in the state of New York, so it didn't really make too much of a difference. I do want to talk about one more thing as far as like the caucus structure goes, because I think one of the things that we could benefit coexistence of caucuses is I guess kind of like an answer for each other, if that makes sense, because I think one of the biggest conflicts within the party is that vice versa, like either you'll make me look weak or I'll make you look crazy, one of the two.
Right.
And no matter who's in control of the party, the other one always exists to some extent, and without any of the positive effect of being able to reach. Or like, do you think there could be some sort of like, CLC Radcock joint task force to create like messaging for candidates, so when Justin Amash gets asked about Vermin Supreme, he can actually have a legitimate answer?
Yeah, I think we have to return to basics. We gotta be platform centric in far as party messaging goes, and really amplify what our candidates are saying. Because here's the thing: we can have candidates of any stripe, and it's fine. It's okay, because it doesn't really make that much of a difference to other candidates. It doesn't hurt the party when a candidate says something dumb. Now, if it's really, really dumb, it can hurt the party, clearly. But imagine if it had been a candidate who's saying some of the things that like LPNH has been saying, right? Nobody would notice. Nobody would care. You just mute them and move on. So it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But when it is a Libertarian Party affiliate, it actually has some weight behind it, and it makes it gives the appearance that we're associated with it just by proxy. So I think the Libertarian Party messaging really should be candidate centric, issue centric, and I think that the idea of edgelord messaging just to grab attention, it's gone by the wayside. We've seen what happens. I mean, look, even in LP and H, they're falling apart because of their messaging. They're at odds with each other because of their own messaging. So, if they're causing all this distraction within the Libertarian Party as a whole, and even within their own state affiliate, it's clear that that's just not a path to success for the Libertarian Party at all. Like, I can't imagine anybody trying to argue for that anymore. It's clearly been a massive failure. Even though you've grown your Twitter account, what else have you done? Doesn't matter. That's why I left LP Texas. I grew their Twitter account more than anybody else did, but it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I think I put out some good messaging. I think I encouraged a lot of libertarians, and I did get some. I know I got people involved in the Libertarian Party. But again, it needs to be the candidates that are out there reaching people, and I think that has to be the focus. I think that we've got to develop candidates to bring them up and put them in front of people and say, this is a party worth joining. And I don't think a state account, state social media, while it's somewhat important, I don't think that's really going to be what pushes the Libertarian Party to the next stage. Like I agree with a lot of the criticism of them not talking about a lot of the mandates and the lockdowns back in 2020, 21, I agree. A lot of it, they didn't talk about it enough. But even if they had talked about it, the Republicans weren't that far behind, and we started talking about it pretty quickly. So we would have had a couple months, maybe 3 months, 4 months of really pushing that messaging. Would we have really gotten that much from it? I don't really think so. I think we would have gotten something, but I don't really think it would have made that much of a difference in the long run, even though I completely agree with the criticism that it wasn't being talked about enough, and we didn't push back hard enough on it.
Fully disagree that it wouldn't have done much. I do think being out in front of the GOP on that issue could have fairly drastically changed the scope.
It would have been better than what it was, that's for sure.
I'll push back a little bit on what you said, or by asking a question. Do you effect on the movement?
I don't. As far as like other Libertarian Party accounts, I know that I don't know that it directly had any effect on any other Libertarian races or accounts. I know that Libertarian Party of New Hampshire's messaging certainly cost a lot of donors to other state affiliates and the national. But as far as his specific campaign, I don't really know. I can't really say that had any effect. I mean, he's not like David Duke or anything like that, where clearly just even the name itself is so toxic you can't touch it.
Yeah, I respect the consistency there, because when you said that, like, I was curious.
Right, there's exceptions clearly.
Right, because I know a lot of people were very vehemently against that the name Kaufman appeared on a ballot line next to the word libertarian. The party's doomed forever, and I just didn't see it that way. And so I was curious if you did.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a household name. I mean, it's one of those things that he's going to say some dumb shit. I mean, let's be honest. What Libertarian candidate probably hasn't said some dumb shit?
Fair.
So it's kind of one of those things that as long as he's not going out there and actively promoting the KKK or doing a Nazi salute, it's probably gonna be okay. And probably, I mean, it's New Hampshire. Nobody else is paying attention.
Yeah,
that's kind of the bottom line.
Yeah, I think I'm honestly one of my favorite things to do to people is confuse the shit out of them by retweeting all of your stuff and all of Coverdale stuff out of LP New Hampshire. And especially there was that little war between LPNH and LP Texas for a little bit.
You're breaking up there for a second. Can you?
Here, wait. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, sorry, man. I don't know what's going on with my mic today. But there was that little bit of a war between LPNH and LP Texas there for a little bit. Not an outspoken necessarily war, but you guys were kind of trying to out message each other in opposite directions. And I was loving retweeting the shit out of both of you. Because and I think kind of to my earlier question about having an answer is fairly easy. It's New Hampshire. They're fucking weird. And the other 49 states can agree on that. And every normal citizen from all of the other 49 states are like, oh yeah, you're kind of right. New Hampshire, they're weird up there. And to say that they're messaging to people in New Hampshire who are kind of crazy and the war is gay messaging is going to resonate up there, let them do that. It's New Hampshire. They live in a cold, frozen tundra. Let them do that up there, and we can do what we're doing here. And honestly, I've had a fairly good success rate with normies that have brought up LPNH as a problem. A fairly good track record with normies bringing up LPNH actually enables me to have a conversation with them of what they were actually trying to convey. They've opened that door that they're trying to open of doing that. Even their Tucker Carlson is a socialist post from last week. My sister sent a white nationalist, and she's a pretty cookie cutter Democrat, and I got her by the end of the conversation to be like, oh yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense. He kind of is a socialist. I just haven't heard about any of his economic policy, so they kind of break down those like binary divides and stuff. And I think that what they do can be beneficial. There's definitely some posts that have gone too far. And
there's always a line.
Yeah. But I mean, I think I could definitely say the same about LP Texas. That there are definitely people out there that probably could have been persuaded to be libertarians that now can't because they saw one post wrong way from LP Texas and wrote the entire LP off as like lefty losers.
Right, and the issue, you say you had success with talking with people about these things. Most people we don't get to talk to. We get that one impression, right? So we do have to be careful about how we message and how we talk to people, especially from official accounts. Again, candidates, they're the ones that can bring people in, and they're the ones that can actually influence people. But they're not going to have the negative effects that the state affiliate can have. Like if a state affiliate with their logo and everything says it from the state account, it can have a much different impact than if a candidate says something. So
yeah,
it's one of those. It's just a balancing act, and there's always going to be a line one way or the other. You've got to be careful not to cross. So it's when you're trying to come up with content, you push yourselves, and sometimes you push a little too hard one way or the other. I've done it definitely. So
yeah,
how the game goes.
Right. I think this goes against quite some time, but it's something that I've come to realize, and to what you're saying is I think that a state affiliate account should be mostly internal messaging, which is weird to say out loud because I think we do way too much internal messaging as it is, but the purpose of a state affiliate account in any party, if you look at all the rest of the parties, is to give like rah-rah speeches and to cookie cutter taxation is theft, just consistency, so that people can follow and just get that consistency from you and feel like they're part of something that they know that they can be a part of and that they know isn't going to move away from them or anything like that. And if they can just have that cookie cutter consistency, we can build. The candidates are able to bring you into that, and then once they're gone and the cycle's over, you can remain still kind of a part of this like little home, and you can see a taxation is theft post go across your timeline to look at who's running next year.
I agree. It's really, we can't look to the party to grow itself. We have to be, the activists, the candidates, they're the ones who are going to grow the party. It's really not going to come from within itself. It just needs to do the basic things right. And let people know what's going on, what the challenges are. And really, it really is to talk to people within the movement in a lot of ways already. So. Nope, I can hear you. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Just go to lpclc.org. That'll pull up. There's a join page right there. You sign in. We'll have a coordinator reach right out to you and talk to you. Our Discord, our link to our Discord's on there. So even if you don't want to join the caucus, you can still join our Discord. We've got a public section. Plenty of lively debates and discussions in there. That's kind of our main hub of activity. We've kept it pretty civil. We've only, in a year and a half, I'm proud that we've only had 2 people that we've had to just go, you're done. So I figure for a Discord server, that's a pretty good track record. But lpclc.org, and all of our social media links are right up there. Pretty easy to find us.
All right. Well, guys, I will not endorse any other caucus in the party ever again, but I like what the CLC is doing. And if you are classical liberal or you like what you've heard,
go find them, join, do some fun things, because the party could use some people that are fired up to make it more successful and better. I think that there's just been way too much hatred and division from every various faction and everything. And, you know, I've seen a little bit of that from you guys, but not nearly as much as some of the older groups that have taken up, or that some of your membership has been a part of. So I like kind of this new direction. And I think that it being an actual like ideological caucus, where like the Prags were pretending not to be, and they were, and like I was their outreach director. Like I'm speaking from experience. Like they were the Classical Liberal Caucus, but they didn't want to call themselves that. And I think that being out and like about what you're about is gonna be a lot of help.
Yeah, and I think that was one of their major downfalls, is they didn't have an ideology to grab people and bring them in, and that definitely hurt them. They knew how to organize, they knew how to fundraise, they knew how to do a lot of stuff, but they didn't know how to hold themselves together, and that fell apart on them pretty quickly at the end.
Yeah, we'll always be sad about that. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Come back here next week. We're doing a Fight Club episode on Tuesday night with a bunch of salesmen and sales professionals. We're going to have a water cooler conversation and talk about how to message to people, how to get people to change their minds in one conversation, mixed with a lot of anecdotal bullshit. So that's going to be fun. And then the following week on Wednesday, normal time, Fight for Liberty with Gabby Cordova, the outreach director for Mike Termont's campaign. She's going to talk about what she does for his campaign, and hopefully get you fired up to join a campaign and do what she does, because every candidate needs a Gabby Cordova, and only one of them has one. So we need to fix that problem. Jonathan, thanks so much for coming on. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
All right, guys. Again, thanks for watching. Check us back here next week, and until then, keep up the fight.